Psalm 27 and verse 13. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Now, just think on those words. Let that thought resonate in your heart for a moment. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. A close look at this text discovers that it offers help and hope to all who live in the land of the living. I trust we will be enriched and inspired as we consider today this word from the life of King David, considered to be a man after God's own heart. First of all, would you note that this is a verse from one of David's Psalms? It summarizes David's personal testimony. The verse begins with the letter I. So it's personal. He's not talking about somebody else. He is talking about himself. He is honest. He is willing enough to be transparent. And he says to us, I would have fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Here is David's honest confession. He attributes his achievements, and there were many, during his 70 years of life to faith in God. He owned up to the fact that life without faith in God is a human tragedy. Recounting his eventful life, he said, I would have fainted. I came close to fainting when I was a boy. I played football, and I was goalie. And I was in the goal, and my defenders let me down. And the center forward was getting through with the ball. He got through my defense and was coming to the goal. I thought I could wait in goal and try to save the ball, or I could go for the ball. And so I left the goal and went out to get the ball before he got to it. And he kicked the ball the same time I was going for the ball, and he kicked me in my head. I saw all the stars of heaven, and I almost fainted. But I did faint in the month of May when I shared that little problem with you. That was the first time in my life I fainted. I just went out, collapsed. I knew nothing. I just wasn't there anymore. And I have discovered that fainting is not a pleasant experience. To lose control, to suddenly not be there anymore. You're not managing. You're not in charge. You're gone. You cannot help anybody, and you cannot help yourself. And David said, I would have fainted. You see, to faint is to lose heart. To faint is to lose your grip on things. To faint is to give up. To faint is to fall by the way. To faint is to surrender to hopelessness, despondency, and despair. To faint is succumb to negativism. To faint is to lose faith in God. To faint is to jeopardize the purpose and destiny of your life. And David said, life impacted me to the point where I could have fainted. And I want you to know that David had occasions in his life which induced fainting. He was anointed by Samuel, and his problems began with that anointing. He was anointed in the midst of his brothers. And Jesse had a number of strong sons. And when God sent Samuel to anoint David, he got to the house and thought this was the one. Oh, look at him, boy. He must be the one. And surely he is the one. And God rejected them all until Samuel had to ask, is there another? And Jesse said, yes, there's the youngest. He is in the field taking care of the sheep. And Samuel said, send and fetch him. And in came this lad, 17 years of age, smelling of sheep and the bush, sweaty and burnt by the sun. And as this youngster walked in, God said to Samuel, that's he. And in the presence of his brothers, Samuel broke the horn and anointed David. How did those brothers feel? Think about it. That God chose the lad, the young fella, above them. God's ways are past finding out. And sometimes when God moves, people become jealous. People can't handle it, you see. You know why? Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. There's only one person who knows our hearts, and that is, we don't even know our hearts, because the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. So, David problems began there and then. Then King Saul, because of David's achievements, became jealous of him and hunted him for years, making David a common fugitive. He had to live in caves and dens, running for his life. And any moment he could have been taken, because there were a lot of betrayers along the way. You remember when 300 people or 400 joined David and they became his band of followers. You remember David, how he went out from place to place and would invade various communities as a means of survival. They dwelt at a place called Ziklag, they and their wives and children. And one day they returned from a mission and found that invaders had captured Ziklag, burnt it with fire, and taken away all their children and their wives. And the men became so heartbroken and so distressed, they wanted to stone David. And the Bible tells us David encouraged himself in the Lord. Listen, it hurts. It hurts when people whom you thought loved you and understood you turn on you and want to do you in. It hurts. Well, remember David's shortcoming when he fell with Bathsheba, committed adultery with Bathsheba, another man's wife, and then how he sent and got rid of Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, and God said, you killed him. You're the man. David had to live with that guilty conscience all his days. You know, it is one thing when you're a bad person and you do bad, and one day you did a terrible thing and were found out. But it's another thing if you're a good person and one day you did something stupid. The fact of your being a good person amplifies that stupid mistake. and cause you to live with it all your life. David had to live with that mistake. Then David had children. He had a number of wives and a number of kids, and there was infighting among his children. There was incest, and not only was there incest, his children even became so angry that one brother killed another or had another killed. All that must have distressed old David. And then to add insult to injury, when he was an older man and bringing things together and consolidating the kingdom, Absalom, his son, tried to dethrone him and tried to have him kill your own son. Your own son. Turning on you to the point of wanting to do you in and take your throne by a coup. With all those things in his mind and his heart, small wonder that David said, I would have fainted. I could have fainted. And I don't know, but I wonder if we have people in here this morning who are at the verge of fainting. It's been one thing after the other. It's been a barrage of assault against your mind and against your ability to carry on. And you just feel like fainting. I think we all come to that place where we feel, oh God, I can't take another one. I can't take any more. Oh God, I just can't go on. David said, I would have fainted. I would have fainted. But then, in this testimony, David tells us where all of this takes place. Where does all of this converge? Where it happens? It happens in the land of the living. Welcome to the land of the living. Now, this happened to David back in 1011 BC. It's interesting that back in 1011 BC, David would be saying, I would have fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. The land of the living is a real place made up of real people with real circumstances and situations. As I grow older, I have learned to respect people's journey and people's pilgrimage, because none of us, no two of us are alike. And we respond differently to the challenges of life. And some of you, if you sat down or stood here now and began to tell us your story, we would say, wow. You know, all of us think, oh God, mine is the heaviest, until you hear somebody else. And when you hear somebody else tell their tale of woe and give you the history of their lives, you said, man alive, I ain't got nothing to worry about. This land of the living is a bittersweet world made up of the good and the bad. And what I wish they had told me when I was a little boy, you have to take the good with the bad. There is no such thing as all good or all bad. It's a bittersweet world. And you have to take the good with the bad, for they go together in the land of the living. You see, the human being is a paradox. Today, he can build a hospital to care for the sick, and tomorrow he can build a bomb with which to destroy the hospital in time of war. That's the world. That's the world. The land of the living is a place of stress. When the Bible tells us in the last days perilous times shall come, the Greek word for perilous is stress-filled, a time of stress. But the land of the living is also a place of great possibilities. Never in all of life is there the privilege to achieve today and to experience today things that our foreparents, even my father, never experienced. The land of the living is a place of joy and pain, a place of victory and defeat, a place of survival of the fittest, a place of sin and evil, hope and inspiration. The land of the living is a place of living and dying. And part of living is preparing to die. The land of the living is a place where we decide our destiny for time and eternity. So, welcome, fellow traveler, to the land of the living. When I was a boy, they had some sweets they used to sell. They were sour sweet, paradise plum. You put the sweet in your mouth and it starts with one taste, sweet. And down the road, at some point of having licked it enough, another taste begins. That's life. That's life. That's life. You have to take in all the senses, all the tastes, all. That's part and parcel of life. And I trust you who are raising families will tell your little ones, look, it ain't all sweet. Prepare to get some hurts and some knocks. And take it like a man, take it like a woman, as we say, because it's all part and parcel of life. David said, I would have fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. In this honest testimony of David, the picture changes from gloom to one of triumph, of positive action. And the change hinges on one word. One word. One word in this verse is the powerful verse of the entire text. I would have fainted unless. That preposition. Unless. I never thought the word unless was such a powerful word until I was studying this text. I would have fainted unless. You could take out unless and say, but for. I would have fainted unless. You see, unless suggests that the present condition does not have to prevail. You have a choice. The present condition does not have to prevail. David said, I would have fainted unless says that there's an alternative to my present situation. Unless in this verse of scripture reminds us that oftentimes the key to release us from our prison is in our own hands. I would have fainted unless for David, it was the choice to believe, to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. Unless you are heading in a direction that can be very disruptive and very disconcerting unless you change your direction. Your thinking can be one that is negative and disruptive and can stifle growth and development unless you change your thinking. What you feel about yourself can continue to keep you down and imprison you from experiencing all the goodness of God unless you change the choice for betterment, the choice for a new life, the choice for change is with us. And it hinges on that word unless, 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 unless. So David said, I would have fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of God in the land of the living. You see, the faithless cease to believe. The godly believes to see. Can I say that again? The faithless cease to believe. The godly believes to see. Man, all of us are up against it. But the difference between those who go under and those who go over are those who believe to see. I am believing to see. I'm not going to wait till I see it to believe. Right now, I believe to see it. I believe to see. And no force, no hell will stop it. No despot from hell, no infringement from the devil will stop it. It will come to pass. For I have believed to see. I have believed to see it. Can you believe that for your life? Can you believe that for your children? Can you believe that for sons and daughters who are not thinking right at this moment and are not doing things right? Can you believe to see it? You may be going through a bit of a hiccup or a bumpy ride at the moment, but can you believe to see better days coming? Come on, man. That's the difference between the faithless and the godly. The faithless says, I see to believe. Unless I see it, I will not believe it. The godly says, I believe to see the glory of God. Look for God's intervention in the land of the living. Be positive. Have an outlook that recognizes that God is here. Sister White said it this morning. This is my Father's world. He has promised and he cannot lie. God is a good God. He's the Lord of goodness. Goodness is one of his attributes. And his goodness he shows to the children of men in the land of the living. James 1:17. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. The psalmist cried in Psalm 23, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The book of Acts says Jesus, the perfect revelation of God, the Father, the God-man, while on earth went about doing good. Romans 2:4, do you despise the riches of his goodness, forbearance, and long-suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leads you to repentance? Believe for good. As you deal with people, as you deal with the children, don't always be harping on the bad and harping on the wrong. See the good in them. See good in them. There comes a time when you have to overlook the false and forget the false and start blessing them. Blessing them. Seeing good. Seeing good. Why? Because we believe to see. We don't see to believe, we believe to see. Is this making sense to you all? We believe to see. And it's not mind over matters, it's the exercise of faith. My wife can tell you, we started off in the ministry, and a neighbor used to send us a bucket of water a day, a bucket of drinking water a day. That's how we started. We had no fridge. And we used to say, oh, for a cool drink. Huh? And then my wife one day said, let's believe to see. I see the fridge. I see the orange juice in the fridge. That's her favorite. The orange juice in the fridge. You got to come out of it. Come out of it. And instead of being suppressed by it, you got to believe to see. Here is David's testimony. Psalm 40, verses 1 to 4. David's report. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He also brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. He set my feet upon a rock and established my steps. He has put a new song in my mouth, praise to our God. Many will see it and fear and will trust in the Lord. Blessed is the man who makes the Lord his trust. And of course, we could add to that, for he will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Be encouraged. Life is what it is. This world is what it is. We're here, and there's no place else to go. Wherever you go, it's the land of the living. And you only change the geography and the scene, but you can't change life. Life is life. What makes the difference, whether you are here or there, is I believe to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of